I'm told there's a baseball game tonight that more than one or two of you want to get home to. Well, there's two, but there's only one that really is important to us in the immediate sense. We'll get you out of here quickly. Let's get the evening started. Again, thank you and welcome everyone for coming to the 199th annual meeting. We have said hello. We mentioned that there are 18 Enfields in the world. I'd like us all to wave to the other 17 tonight because we've had reach outs from one or two not that long ago. So, what happened last year? There was no meeting. Well, actually there was a meeting. On October 20th of 2020, so 365 days ago, 17 hardy souls got together in the dark of night to meet at Figaro's on site in Enfield and talk about what's going on, how the pandemic had affected their businesses and their lives. It was a good meeting and it maintained continuity of the society. Since then, by a chance encounter, trying to find out where some 50-year members were, I mentioned to Dick Stevens and Buddy Brown, who most of you know, those guys know everybody in town. They know where everybody is. And got some help with that, and we'll talk about that later, but Dick Stevens brought up, there's a history guy in town who's crazy about history named Tom Heath. He goes, I want him to do some poking around for us. And he did, and he found down the Enfield Historical Society a box labeled Enfield Society for the Detection of Thieves and Robbers. And in it were the original records from 1823 to 1873. So we went from having nothing, as far as we know, to an absolute treasure trove of documents. He found a bunch of articles from the Thompsonville Press, may it rest in peace, and there's one from February 11th, 1926, where the assessor, who was then the secretary, William J. Hughes, suggested to the president, M.J. Liberty, that the position of a society historian be created. Well, Connecticut being the land of steady habits, the society took 95 years to cogitate on that, and this year we named Thomas G. Heath society historian with an immediate payoff. The American historian named Will Durant is quoted as saying, most history is guessing. And courtesy of Tom's efforts, a lot of the guesswork has gone away. We now know exactly where the first meeting took place on January 30th, 1823, in a home on the corner of Bridge Lane and Enfield Street. And the house is still there. It was a home, it belonged to a Dr. Simeon Field, built in 1763. When he passed away, he willed it to his eldest son, Dr. Simeon Field, who was practicing in Somers. He came home, he passed away in 1822, unmarried and childless, and the house went to the next brother, Peter Field, who ran it as a home and a tavern. Now that makes total sense. How are you going to get 45 guys together in the middle of the winter except at a tavern? To fast forward, our society up until a year or two ago always met at the police station, our organizational meetings. But with this new information, we've been meeting at the Powder Hollow Brewery. So some people would say we have thrown off long-held customs. I would like to say we've gone back to our roots. At present, I've got some homework for you guys to do. Right now, we don't have any records of our membership from 1997 going forward. So please, on the honor system, pick a date that you joined and fill out the paperwork so we can reconstruct the membership. Now, many of you remember that Tony Secondo was the secretary for a long time. And when Tony passed away, we didn't get any of the stuff he had. So we thought it was gone. It turns out his daughters donated 8 boxes of stuff to the Enfield Historical Society. And those of you who know Tony know he never threw anything away. And so in the next 8-10 months, Tom is going to go through these things and see what he can find that's pertinent to the society. He's already found our old banner. We had a felt banner. First box he opened, there it was. So that's pretty cool. I would like to now, our Toastmaster, Scott Copen, has deferred this evening to letting Tim Keeney introduce our speaker. So I'd like to call our treasurer, Tim Keeney, to the podium to introduce our speaker for the evening. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to ask people to kind of keep the noise down a little bit so you can listen to us, and we've got a great speaker coming up. First of all, I'd just like to recognize some of our elected officials that are in the audience. So I'm just going to read the names. Please stand up, hold your applause until I get through to the end, and I'll let you know when that is. First, I'd like to recognize John Ungar, Board of Ed, Vice Chair. Next, Lori Ungar, Town Council. Jean Ackrey, Board of Education, Enfield. Carolyn McCaffrey, Probate Judge for Enfield, Summers, Stafford, and Union. Joe Muller, Town Council, Enfield. Constable Kwasnicki, Constable Marianne Turner. Kelly Hemler, Town Council. Cindy Mangini, Town Council. Bob Crisati, Town Council. Kathy Devlin, Board of Finance, Summers. And my favorite attorney, Joe Fallon. Let's give him a big round of applause. Great, so we're very fortunate tonight to have as our speaker someone that I've known for some 30 years. And his name is Dwight H. Merriam. Dwight is a nationally recognized authority in land use law. He comes from Simsbury, Connecticut. He's practiced law for over 4 decades. He's represented landowners, developers, governments, and individuals in land use matters. Dwight's a fellow and past president of the American Institute of Certified Planners, a former director of the American Planning Association, and a former chair of the American Bar Association's section on state and local government. He's truly a nationally recognized authority. He's taught land use at the University of Memphis, University of Bridgeport, Vermont School of Law, University of Connecticut School of Law, and the Quinnipiac School of Law. He's published over 200 articles and written 12 books about such topics as inclusionary zoning, the takings issue, eminent domain and use and abuse, and the legal challenges of group homes, as well as he's co-authored the leading legal casebook in his field entitled Planning and Control of Land Development. Dwight's a retired Navy captain, like myself and Bill McGurk, with 7 years active duty as a surface warfare officer and another 24 years in the Naval Reserves. His active duty included 3 tours in Vietnam. Dwight earned his BA from the University of Massachusetts, his master's degree in regional planning from the University of North Carolina, and his JD degree from Yale Law School. Dwight has 2 daughters and 2 sons. His oldest daughter, Sarah, was confirmed by the United States Senate several weeks ago and now serves as a federal district judge for the state of Connecticut. So I've known Dwight for some 30 years. I was first introduced to him when I was the DEP commissioner in Hartford, and Dwight was the leading authority on coastal zone management law. Several years ago, I also served with him on a task force established by the Chief Justice of the Connecticut Supreme Court focused on increasing pro bono services to the underserved. Dwight will speak on the novel topic of unmanned aerial vehicles, or drones, and the law. I've learned from my experience that with Dwight, I've always walked, whenever I've talked with Dwight, I've always walked away smarter than I was before I talked to him. So, Dwight Merriam.
I didn't know I had to be fitted with a wire. Am I like part of an investigation or something? I'm here to tell you how to detect thieves and robbers, to tell you how to find them. I'm very pleased to be invited here. I've watched the videos of the last few years of this meeting, and it's a lot of fun, and I'm glad we're all out. Unfortunately, I have to go right to questions and answers because Tim took all the time in my introduction. So are there any questions about drones? I'm going to spend not more than 30 minutes giving you, I'm not going to tell you how to license and register your drones. I'm not going to tell you a lot about law, but I'm going to tell you about what drones are doing, what you can do with drones, what you can't do with drones. And I think, importantly, at the end, I'll talk a little bit about warrants and searches and seizures and privacy. And I'm going to answer the question that everybody asked me. If somebody flies a drone over my backyard and I don't like it, can I shoot it down? So stay for that part. Now let me... They tell... Oh, man. May as well tie me up. They have to tell me I have to stay over here. So, how many are there? Well, look up here on the screen. There are, about 1 million of them. How many of you have a drone, incidentally, or somebody in your family? All right. You're going to learn a little bit more about them. By 2024, that's not that far away, it's expected that the number will double. That's a big number. So, did I unplug myself by pulling that? I think I might have. Hold on. What are the types of drones that we see? There are at least 9 different types, as you see here. Some of them are very big. The Predator drone that you see on the news that are used in warfare, and some of them are very small. In fact, here's the largest drone right now. This thing weighs 28 tons. You do not get this at Best Buy and fly it on the weekend with your kids. This is the smallest drone. Look at this thing. And there are seats down front here, incidentally, if you want to see a little closer, but this is the size of a quarter. It's flying now. University of Pennsylvania professors developed it. Can you imagine where this thing can fly and you wouldn't even know it's there? Amazing. So let's go down here. Wait a minute. Yeah, I looked at the old videos of what you do here. And the only thing that's missing? What's missing? Door prizes. That's the thing that's missing. So I'm bringing you a door prize tonight. All right, so I tried to figure out how to do this at random, and I'm totally random myself, so that wasn't hard. So who's got a birthday today, for example? Why would you be here if it was your birthday today? Who's got a birthday close to today? How close? How close?
October 12th. October 15th, 21st.
My head's spinning. Who's closest? The 21st, the closest? Who's closer? Who's the 21st? You are? All right, well, this is kind of a birthday party for you. I got a couple of things for you. What?
Thank you, Esquire.
Let's go. Just take that cover off. Take the cover off.
It's glued on.
I know I got kind of beat up in my car, So,
Let's see.
well,
Yeah, there we go.
and what's your first name?
Ed,
Ed. Well, Ed.
don't burn anything.
I'm not going to burn the church down. Oh, I got some of his cake. Let's sing happy birthday to Ed. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ed.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to you. Excellent.
Thank you, sir.
Did he blow out the candle?
I don't think I got enough wind.
Anybody know CPR? Ed's blowing out the
I'm done,
candle.
I'm done,
Okay.
I got it.
Oh, man. And here's your door prize, Ed. Got robbers and thieves on the front. You want to open that up quickly? See what you got? Well, I head back up there. Ed's got a quadruplex drone with camera. So we're all going to go over to Ed's house and fly his drone, and we'll see if one of the neighbors shoots it down while it flies over. Yeah, so that's a very lightweight, that's an ultra lightweight drone. You don't fly it outside if it's too windy, but fly it inside, you'll have some fun with it. So let's go back to work here, what we're supposed to do. Congratulations, Ed. So how can they help us? Well, here are just a few of the ways. Accident investigations. They get out there before the police. They start taking photographs. Illinois started that in 2015. 200 photos for small accidents and up to 800 or more for larger accidents. They can monitor correctional facilities. They've been used to track prison escapees. Ohio first did that. They can control crowds. They can help police understand the extent of the crowds and where they are. And they can find lost people. You know about that in Enfield, don't you? Anybody ever know about that? I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. And look, most importantly, the bottom line, detect thieves and robbers. That's what you're here for. That's what the society is, right? Are you with me? Get those drones, get them up in the air, get those robbers and thieves, all right? So, and more. Here's some other things they can do. They can deliver emergency medical equipment. They've been doing this in Sweden. They can send out defibrillators, and they found that if they dispatched the defibrillators on a drone, at the same time they dispatched the ambulance, the drone got there on an average 1 minute and 50 seconds quicker, on average. So that means much quicker in some cases, a little less quick in others. Do you think 2 minutes makes a difference in a person with a heart attack? Absolutely. So you're going to see some drone use of this type. In fact, this is the control center in Sweden where this has been used, and that's one of the actual drones from Sweden used to send defibrillators out. Now, you had this incident in Enfield in which, the Vernon police contributed their drone. A blind man wandered off. 30 hours he was out there, I believe, if I remember correctly. Do you think they would have, in a lot of underbrush, tough going, hard to find the man? The drone found the man. So they're very important in search and rescue. And Hartford police use them to track stolen cars. You know, I guess they're going to have a lot of drones, but and to find missing people as well. And then we find them used in other circumstances. Well, let me get this. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures. A lawyer friend of mine, I did a webinar with her today for land use lawyers, used a drone to help demonstrate the loss of shoreline that was causing a collapse of a house. But here are some other uses, including natural disaster damage, inspecting wind turbines. Think about how difficult that is if getting up there. Bridges, a lot of bridges, making deliveries, we know all about that. Geographic mapping, of course, storm tracking and journalism and agriculture. There's so much going on in agriculture right now in drones. I don't know if you've been reading about it, but there's so much that they could do. Now here's a couple of pictures that my friend, attorney Wendy Kellington, took in connection with her litigation out there. And there's the inspection of a wind turbine by a drone and the campfire. You know about the campfire in California, what an enormous fire it was. Very difficult to get your arms around where it is, where it's going. The drones were instrumental. They were key in directing the firefighters to the right place and trying to get that under control. and inspecting bridges. Very difficult to do the way it has been historically done. And then some uses, and there's a couple of things in agriculture. Do you know what these drones could do with agriculture? They fly out, they can detect where herbicides and pesticides need to be applied, what needs water, what doesn't, how the plants are growing. They can also, by using temperature sensors, indicate whether livestock is ill or not, target the animal, go out and send somebody to get the animal and get them treated. The result is, on the environmental side for crop production, is that we use less water, less herbicide, less pesticide, less adverse runoff, savings for the farmers, and it's all done with drones. Some uses you might not have imagined in preparing for tonight's talk. I redid some of the research I've done over the years on drones, and I hadn't seen this. Window washing. I need one of these at my house. But I think the next big thing for you, somebody should patent this. We should get in the business, Keeney. Cleaning gutters. This company actually does gutter cleaning and gutter inspections with drones. There's some guy with his drone just flying it over the gutter to blow the leaves out. I don't think that's going to be the best technique. But, all right, here's what you can't do with drones. All right, there are some things you can't do with drones. Do not do these things, okay? Anybody want to yell out what you can't do with a drone? Spy on a neighbor. Anything else? Ed's going, I'm not going to have any fun if I can't use my drone. I want to use my drone. You remember this guy, 18, 19, 20 years old, Clinton, Connecticut? Weaponized his drone, tied on a propane cylinder, turned it on, had an igniter, flew it around, took a picture, got on the internet, went viral. People went nuts. And the Federal Aviation Administration subpoenaed him and his father. They refused to show up. They were held in contempt for not showing up in their subpoenas. But lo and behold, the young man went ahead and punched out a law enforcement officer and got a year in jail in the end. So I don't think he's flying his drones right now. But you cannot put flamethrowers on drones, in case you were thinking about that when you get home tonight. Do not do that. But still, the companies, I found this company just this last week that's advertising this. It shows how they can put a flamethrower on one of their drones. Not a good idea. So we have some law on the subject. The General Assembly in 2017 considered some laws regulating the use of drones. This particular legislation did not go forward. But here was the title sheet to the legislation, and you see here, it says, this is the proposed legislation that didn't go through. Let me read it to you, if those in the back can't see it. Model policy, they want to promulgate a model policy that provides guidelines on the operation of an unmanned aerial vehicle by a law enforcement officer, including weaponized unmanned aerial vehicles. How many of you think that's a really good idea? Not a good idea. Although the federal government does have in the Transportation Act that was readopted, does have a provision that the government officials can take down a drone or other aircraft that flying where it's not supposed to fly or creates a danger. But only the federal government, state government, and presumably the local police under their direction can take it down. But the idea that we were going to create a policy in Connecticut that would allow local police departments to weaponize their drones was met with a lot of resistance. Didn't pass. Okay? So we don't have that. This happens to be a scene from Arizona of one police department working on that issue. So here are the Connecticut drone laws, very short, very little, and maybe Tim Keeney will recognize one of these when we get to it, but this says, this is the law that's in effect now, and it basically says that no municipality shall enact or enforce an ordinance or resolution that regulates the ownership, so forth, so forth. Why do we have such a law? Because of the federal government is the sovereign when it comes to airspace. This is an airspace issue. You can't have an individual town regulating the airspace. The airspace is under the control of the federal government. So they are the sovereign, and the state is a sovereign to some extent too. So there are some state regulations with regard to drones, but generally it's a federal issue. So you can't do it locally, except in this one case, if your municipality is also a water company. And if it is, you can regulate that and you can overfly the class 1 and 2 land, and Tim, you know how important that is in terms of protecting the water resource to be able to overfly those lands. So if your town is the water company as well, they do have the right to do certain things. Now how about this is the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and they do try to control drones in some ways, and typically, like some local governments do. Basically, you can read this. Anybody wants this PowerPoint, incidentally, just email me at dwightmerriam@gmail.com. Just DWIGHTMERRIM, like the dictionary. Perhaps you have a Merriam-Webster Collegiate Dictionary, makes a wonderful gift. Bar mitzvahs, christening, weddings, anniversaries, all of that. And anyway, just email me at Gmail, dwightmerriam@gmail, and I'll send you the PowerPoint. So you can read the fine print here. But the fine print here is that the state of Connecticut, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, does not want you overflying public parks. And I once, about 3 years ago, researched the entire country to find all the local regulations. That's mostly where local governments are regulating, and they probably could do that in the interest of health and safety without violating the federal government's preeminent authority, okay? And that's where we usually see it. At the same time, I would say that local governments have to be really careful about regulating drones to not violate the federal primacy in this area, but also to not inadvertently preclude their important use. I represented one of the largest insurance companies in trying to protect their rights to use drones to access properties that were fire damaged or storm damaged. And if you can't use a drone, what do you have to do? You have to put a person up on the roof on a ladder. That's the last thing you want to do. And it takes a long time when there's been a natural disaster to get out there and survey the property, how much better drones are. And some municipalities, not in this state, but elsewhere, have adopted local drone laws that say they can't be flown within like 200 feet of someone's property without their permission and a whole bunch of other things. That's not a good idea. So if you're going to regulate drones, just make sure that they are consistent with local regulations. Very little local regulation actually in Connecticut. There's more about DEP's controls. They say the operation of these aircraft are noisy, they want to protect the parks, all makes sense. The only local regulation that pops up in my research, but I'm sure there's others in Greenwich, and it just says you can't fly model aviation, which includes drones, in such places designated by the director or his agent in the parks. This is a park control. So we do have some controls, and they're generally accepted and haven't been resisted, to control use of drones over parks and during festivals and other events where a drone could fall out of the sky and hurt somebody, right? Not necessary unless they get a license in advance from the town in some form. Now, how many of us think you can shoot down a drone? There's 1, 2, 3. Would you folks, when I'm done, come up and pick up one of my business cards? And also, where are the 3 people? All men? Please transfer most of your assets to your wife or family member, because you won't have them for long if you start shooting down drones. No, it's not a good idea. But it has been done. It was done just last week by a convicted felon, a guy who I think has a 16 felony arrest and is not allowed to have a weapon, and he shot the police department's drone down. That's not a good idea. What? All right, here's why you can't do it. I'm trying to save you people, for heaven's sakes. Here's why you can't do it. Look at these reasons. It's a federal crime. That's a good reason not to do it. Firing a weapon in some places could be criminal mischief. You have additional restrictions on firing of weapons locally. Homeowners own their own airspace above their property. Self-defense is not a viable option, I'll just tell you that. That's the only bit of legal advice you'll get from me. And the drone operator may sue you in court. Well, that's what happened in a couple of these cases. So here's this Florida man, and like I said, it just appeared. So I have to pull up the news article from October 14th. Now tell me when I'm showing you this man's picture, this is a guy named Wendell Gooney. Makes sense, right? Wendell Gooney, G-O-N-E-Y. This is Wendell Gooney. Tell me if he looks to you, you know, looks are deceiving. Does this man look to you like someone who might shoot down a police drone? Well, tell me. Yes, he does. This is a drone shooter if I've ever seen one. So, Mr. Goody, the incident happened on July 11th. They just arrested him last week in Central Florida, city of Mount Dora. Stand clear of there. The Lake County Sheriff's Office was investigating a burglary. Huh? That's in the society's interest, right? When it deployed a drone to assist in their search. But shortly after deploying the device, the drone was shot down by gunfire from a neighboring property. Authorities said deputies went to that property and met with Gooney, who promptly confessed to using a .22 caliber rifle to shoot their drone, according to prosecutors. So he's being held. But that's not the first case. I wrote about this other case in some depth a few years, three or 4 years ago when it happened. There's somebody right now that's being sued for shooting down a drone. Could you take that fine name for me? So, William Meredith shot down an $1,800 drone that he thought was spying on his daughters in the backyard. He said it was 20 feet above the daughters. The airspace where drones can fly is up to 400 feet. The testimony later was that it was at maybe 200 feet, not 20 feet. But it doesn't really matter in the long run for what I'm going to tell you about what happened. So there were two teenage girls in the backyard. Father saw the drone fly over, William Meredith's drone, and he claims, the owner of the drone says he claims he was only trying to take pictures of a friend's house. So he shot down the neighbor's drone, and Meredith was arrested and charged with first-degree criminal mischief and first-degree wanton endangerment for shooting down the drone. And meanwhile, the FAA is still trying to figure out how to handle this. Well, here's what happened. Oh, there's the gentleman that lives next door. Does it look like any of your next-door neighbors, incidentally? If you do, be careful where you fly your drone. So there he is, unhappy dad. This is William Meredith, rather, that shot down the neighbor's drone with his shotgun, who took action to protect his daughter. So, but guess what happened? So the case went to the local state courts, and the state courts found that it was not criminal mischief or any of those things. And I got one slide out of sequence here. So here's what the judge said at the state court. He rules that Meredith had the right to shoot down his neighbor's drone. And the judge said, quote, "I think it's credible testimony that his drone was hovering from anywhere from 2 or 3 times over these people's property. There was invasion of their privacy and that they had the right to shoot down the drone." So he gets off of state court. Meanwhile, the neighbor who's lost his $1,800 drone, do you think this is the right decision, incidentally? What are your lawyers and I think that's right? That he had the right to shoot it down because it was invasion of his privacy. Yeah, okay. We join the other 3 people that signed up to shoot that drone. I'm going to run out of business cards here tonight. So he went off to federal court, And the federal judge, in a really interesting 18-page decision, thought through the whole thing. And here's what the federal judge said when the claim was made to the federal court for damages for the $1,800 destroyed drone and for a declaration that the FAA controlled this in some way. He said, again, as the court already discussed above, FAA is not involved in this case, nor is the court convinced that it's a federal question. But a federal question, if one exists in these hypothetical actions, is important to the federal government. He wrote his opinion on the case. So he dismissed the case. The owner did not get compensated for his $1,800 drone. And so we have to look at what's going on since. So here's a couple of sort of, a few more slides, 4 or 5 slides, and I want to wrap up here. Here's one. Is a warrant required? If the zoning enforcement officer in a civil action, not a criminal action, it's a criminal action, so certainly the Fourth Amendment's at issue. But if the zoning enforcement officer wanted to search for, abandoned cars or something, could they fly a drone over the property and not violate the Fourth Amendment right to unreasonable search and seizure? How many people there's no right or wrong answer here because the issue is somewhat unsettled still, but I'll tell you where I think it is and where it's going and what we decided today in this webinar that we had this afternoon on some of these issues. So how many think the zoning enforcement officer has a right to fly a drone over a property looking for a zoning violation and then proceed on that violation? Raise your hand. How many think they do not without some type of warrant? Okay, so in this particular case that I cited, this recent case, the Fourth Amendment was found to apply in a civil proceeding. This was a zoning enforcement officer proceeding. And warrant was required. The issue was one of curtilage. There's a word you hardly would ever see. I'm not even going to ask you. The first time I saw it, which wasn't that long ago, a few years ago when I was doing some research in this area, curtilage is the incidence of your control over your property. So your front porch is part of your curtilage. It's into your private area, the one that you expect is a private domain. Your front yard might not be, your side yard, maybe your driveway might not be, but once you get close enough to be, say, on a porch, or certainly inside a deck, inside a screen porch, you're in the curtilage, you're in the area that's subject to privacy and control. So that's what they were doing, and the court said it is within the protection of the Fourth Amendment, even though it's not a criminal search, and you have to get a warrant. And these are called administrative warrants. Now here's the thing that's so hard for us to figure out. We don't know the answer, so maybe you don't know the answer, because the lawyers who study it don't know either. There's a long-standing string of cases that say, somebody asked me this afternoon, for example, what about my Google Maps? From the street or from the satellite? Do I have a problem if this is a drone case that says you need an administrative warrant? Can I use those Google things? Because, I look at the Google map of my house and I said, who's that company who's at my house? Well, it turns out it was Thanksgiving when they happened to overfly my house. And I could also tell by what was in the yard what year it was that they overflew it. But so, yes, you can use those because there's a line of cases that says fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters flying high over your house. Remember, it can't, as a matter, I used to be a pilot in another life. You can't fly below 1,000 feet generally. When you're up 1,000 feet or more in a fixed-wing aircraft or a helicopter, there's lots of cases that say you don't need a search warrant for that. But a drone is different. When Ed and his little drone go flying around with his camera, he's going to be down at 50 feet up. And you're not even going to see his little drone because it's so small and quieter than a fixed-wing aircraft or a helicopter. So we got this line of cases that says that's okay. And now we got a case like this and a couple of others that are saying, well, wait a second, it's a drone. It's different. It's lower. It's into your curtilage. It's into your private domain attached to your main domain. All right? You with me? So it's the change in the technology that is driving the change in the law here. And a couple of other cases I gave you happen to be Connecticut cases. This Glazer case from 2019, using a drone which stated an invasion of privacy claim, looking at another neighbor's property. Didn't say they won, it just said they made a sufficient statement to support going to court. That's different than winning, but it's a step that says you could have invasion of privacy by a drone. In this other case, it was a zoning enforcement, but no one challenged the use of the drone. They used the drone photos, and the zoning violator lawyer forgot to say, hey, you can't use the drone. And they have a $13,800 fine levied against them. So we don't know. But we know where it's headed. CCM has this wonderful report. Again, if you get my full PowerPoint, you'll have the references to them. And here I'll end with their summary of what they found and their recommendations. Excuse me for looking up at the screen. I don't like it when people do that, but my printout, I made the printout too small. Bear with me. So let me summarize. The main findings of the report was that the main concerns are about privacy and safety. And second, most of the jurisdiction is a federal matter and not a state or local matter. And third, state or local government attempts at regulating non-governmental flight are preempted by federal authority. I said that earlier, right? They preempt us, and they are the sovereign when it comes to aviation. But all state and local governmentally owned drones, say that fast 3 times, should register with the Office of Policy and Management so that the use can be recorded, summarized, and publicly reported. That's their recommendation of this particular report. And we'll go back here one, if I could do it. And here's the recommendations in the end, and I'll conclude with this. State, 29 minutes. State statute should be should be reviewed. There's a Freudian slip from a lawyer for me. State statute should be reviewed and revised to reflect drones. We don't have enough state guidance right now. We tried it in that legislation that was pushed aside. Remote operation of weapons should be prohibited, yes, including by law enforcement, in my judgment. The potential for damage is too great. Law enforcement use of drones for targeted surveillance should be limited in duration unless there's probable cause and a warrant. Makes sense, right? From everybody's perspective. And the legislature should adopt a drone-based data retention program so they know what stuff is being captured by drones, right? We need to know what's going on. And I don't think we do. I think there's things going on that we don't know about. They're probably okay, but we ought to have a database to figure out how it's being used and where. And then finally, all state and local governmentally owned drones should register with OPM. So there we are. Ahead of us, we got uncertain law about privacy and about Fourth Amendment search and seizures. The civil rights of people are involved, but also the need of law enforcement to be able to use drones in pursuit of, well, robbers and thieves. And that's what we're here for. So thank you for your attention. I'll take any questions.
In addition to the free dinner, Mr. Merriam got a gold membership card, gold colored membership card. Gold, and a hat from the society. So, there you go, sir. Wear it long and proud. The rest of you guys, they're available for $15 a piece from Scott Cooper. I'd like to now get to the society traditions. We announced the 100-year members, none of whom are here, because they'd have to be 121 years old. But anyway, some of these names may ring a bell with you, a grandfather's friend, I don't know. Norman Bartley, Robert Bridge, Edward Button, Paul J. Harrison, William Savage, Rex Spear, perhaps of Spear Avenue, don't know. Louis Van Doren, Charles Bridge, William Burgess, Edwin Gowdy, John P. Manning Road perhaps, Abraham Sisiski, and Frederick Steele. Those were the people who joined 100 years ago. Now for our 50-year members, there were 8. I have definitive evidence as to where they're not with us anymore. Found their obituaries. That would be Ben Gambino, Harry Barlow, Charles Nelson, and Harold Staples. Now there are 4 people, 4 men. None of us could find anything on these gentlemen, whether they're alive or not. If any of you know them, we've got beautiful certificates for them. One is Harold Wagner, and you'd be stunned how many Harold Wagners there are in the United States. Several hundred. Kent Amedan, A-M-E-D-A-N, couldn't find him. The Reverend Dale Hunter, and Michael Wood. There's thousands of Michael Woods. But if any of you know them, and they can trace their lineage to Enfield, we have a certificate for them. One of our other society traditions is the Elder's Cane, which is right here. The president, it goes to the person who is the longest tenured member. And that would be Ben Alimo, who joined in 1950. So he joined 71 years ago. There's an Alimo or 2 here in the building this evening, is there not? Okay. Can you can verify his whereabouts? You're the other Alimos, all right. You're those Alimos, all right. So, anyways, the cane now is held by the society. The last member to hold the cane in his hand was a guy named Jim Liberty, who held it for like 25 years. And then when he passed, the next person that went down to a gentleman named William Gray, but he had moved to South Carolina, and the decision was made, the cane's not leaving Enfield. So it's now in the possession of the society. Every member who's ever held the cane's name is engraved on it. And I would like to thank Andres Freebus for reading those names for us, because I could not read them, and it took some young eyes to just rattle them right off, no problem. So no matter what focal length I held that thing at, it was hopeless. And so now we know, in case before the names get rubbed off by history, we have a laundry list of all the members who have held the cane since the cane was created. We'd like to remind you that $1 got you a lifetime membership in 1823, and it still gets you a lifetime membership today. We have not adjusted for inflation. Thank you. In closing, I would like to thank our members of arrangements. We had several new members who were incredibly valuable to the addition. Jameson Burnside, Dick Stevens, and Tom Heath. We talked about the oldest member of the society, but we'd also like to recognize the oldest person in the society. And Dick Stevens is going to run us through something quick on that.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone 90 years old, please stand up. 91? Are you 92? 91, right? 92. 93. 94. 95. 96. 97. Well, Ernie has the honor of being the oldest member of the organization, not the longest member. But I will say that Ernie is a veteran of World War II, Korea. He also served in the church for a number of years. He was former fire policeman in the Hasbro Fire District, and also a volunteer for the Hasbro Fire District. And this coming Wednesday, Rotary International is going to give him a Paul Harris Award and donate $1,000 in his name to humanity efforts that the Rotary Foundation provides throughout the world. Thank you. Let's honor him.
job, and thank you. Lastly, Figaro's. They hit it out of the park again tonight. Well done. Well done. In closing, next year is going to be the 200th annual meeting. We don't have a date and a time yet, but we'll let everybody know as best we can. And depending on how it goes, the next year we'll have our 200th anniversary meeting. So we got 2 bites at the apple, the annual and the anniversary. And please start thinking about where we're going to hold it. If you have any ideas, you want to hold it in Enfield, we're going to need a big place. There's some ideas already floating around. We're trying to get a speaker of national note. That takes time, but we hope to have a fantastic 200th. And I want to thank you all very much. And let's go catch the rest of the baseball game. Thank you.